Hello and welcome to Fresh Perspectives. My name is Gail, and my guest today is Bill Ward. And I believe you're referred to as the president of Rails to Trails.
I am the president of Rails to Trails.
Okay. I wasn't sure if I had the exact title, but okay, that's... Okay, now, normally when I start my program, if somebody's been on Fresh Perspectives for the first time, I usually have them tell the viewing audience something about themselves.
Who I is? Well, you know, I've been in the entertainment business here in Western New York and beyond for the last bunch of years. I've also been involved with a lot of youth activities throughout the years. Right now, I still play music for a living and record, and I happen to be, I've been on the board of Chautauqua Rails to Trails for quite a few years, and when Jim Fincher decided to retire as president, they asked me to take over.
They asked you to.
They asked me to take over.
You didn't run for it.
Nobody else
wanted the job. Okay.
And they've seen me run meetings before, so I think they figured that was my superpower. So we, you know, I belong, or I am active there, of course. I also belong to the Chautauqua Watershed. I'm on the board of directors for the Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy.
Oh, good.
As well as I am executive, the board of directors chair for Chautauqua County Visitors Bureau.
Oh, okay.
And so I get, I just came from the Chautauqua Hometown Heroes Veterans Memorial grand opening. I'm on that committee as well, which is a very, very cool thing.
Oh, yeah. That was in 2021, right? When they had that ceremony?
Right, but we did a ribbon cutting today for some of the kiosks and some of the expansions on that. So it's worth going to take a look.
Oh, okay.
Really
I'll have
cool.
to get back down there sometime. Yeah. Oh, okay. So you've actually been able to earn a living as a musician all these years?
Well, when you marry well, you can. Yeah, I mean, I've done other things throughout the course of my career. I've been a youth pastor for a number of churches. I worked as a contracted youth advisor for Chautauqua Institution for a number of years. We also, a friend of mine pulled me into his business as a guitar a retail person. I'd never been in retail before, so he had a guitar store, Trinity Guitars in Jamestown. Jim Holler did.
Okay.
And so we were in retail, and we also did a lot of guitar repair, and I still do that. I have a shop in my home, and so I just
so you
kind of
can repair. Oh, okay.
Repair instruments.
I just wondered. Sometimes artists do have to do something else.
You know, when yeah, and we you're right, we bristle at that. And when I played in Ellicottville a lot back when my wife was first having babies, and I was out there a lot, and I would commiserate with the ski instructors because they would go through the same thing. You know, they would have these people who would just have a great time, learning how to ski, and they would, well-meaning people would say, you know, you're very good at this. What do you do for a living?
and it was their job.
And it was their job. So yeah, I mean, I've been blessed. I've been able to play music and also write music and do the things that I love outside of that too. My whole life. I could not have done it without the partnership of my wife, Dina, who is an ER nurse.
Oh, yeah. She's wonderful. Yeah.
She is.
But you know, where she was working when I first met her the first time was back when I worked for the Resource Center and in Jamestown.
Right. So at the Nut Tree.
The Nut Tree. Yes. She worked in the Nut Tree. she was working there, and that wound up getting sold, I remember. But then she went and got a job at the bookstore at the Chautauqua Institution for a while.
Sure.
And then apparently went back to school to become a nurse after
did.
that.
It was an amazing feat. And you know, raising two young girls and raising, you know, a musician husband, which is, you know, still a work in progress. She is my hero. I mean, she is a community hero. She doesn't know it. She literally doesn't know it. She's always, you know, making references to, you know, my presence in the room and the fact that she's kind of, you know, a nobody or whatever, and which is the farthest from the truth.
Yeah.
Because I'm out in the community. I talk to people like you, and I hear her name all the time because she can't tell me. You know, oops, I just bashed this thing. Sorry. She can't tell me. Because of HIPAA laws,
right?
You know,
of
who
course
she's
not.
run into.
Oh, no,
So
no.
a lot of folks think that you know, she's said howdy and stuff, but so I hear about it all the time. So Dina Ward is truly a Chautauqua community hero.
Yeah, I would say so, actually. I really would. Anyway, does that make her more famous than you?
She's more important.
Yeah, because she's
Yeah.
because she's saving people's lives.
All I do is I do is sort of entertain their souls once in a while. She saves their life, but I think it's been a great partnership through the years. I could not have, you know, I married up for sure.
Well, you know, I remember the year that my mother passed away. We went to that. What do they call it? Celebration of Lights that hospice does?
Oh, at hospice.
That
yeah.
hospice does. And I remember you were there and sang a couple of songs that year.
Yeah.
So, didn't you sing one about that had something to do with your dad? You were referred to as, what was it, Johnny's
Kid.
Johnny's
Yeah,
Kid?
John Ward was actually another one of my heroes. He's I would not have gone into music without his influence. He was a great musician, great songwriter, singer, and he was a drummer, piano player, guitar player. You know, he was also, you know, he made his way through the world doing what he loved. You know, he was a salesman and a philosopher. And so I think a lot of what I do, I get from him, and I still hear his name. You know, my father died at 90-something, and you couldn't get any more people in the church at his funeral, and that which is kind of an unusual thing. Usually, you know, a lot of times, you know, when you get even my age, you know, a lot of the friends you used to have are just they're not around anymore.
No.
But his influence was far and wide, and so you know, he was, and my mom, who died way too young, also was a great influence, as is my stepmom, Marilyn.
Oh, is your stepmom still alive?
Marilyn, yeah, she was Marilyn Harper, and then Erickson, and then she married my dad.
Oh, okay.
So my father was lucky enough to fall in love twice in his life.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, so he had somebody to spend the rest of his life with.
He absolutely did.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think probably we better get
Yeah, that's all we have time for.
the topic that I invited you here for. Now, for those of you in the viewing audience, I was showing Bill before we started recording the program the list of questions that I had for him.
Yeah, and full disclosure, she was educating me on this.
I'm showing him the questions, and the first one is, do you know any of the history of how it was determined that this section of the railroad was put in through this area, and why?
And you're talking about the end of the lake, right?
Yeah.
That section.
Yeah.
First of all, more full disclosure, I went to Chautauqua High School. I'm sure I was in Mayville a lot, but I have no recollection of the bridge.
Oh,
you
the
know?
bridge. Yeah, it's been gone for enough years
It
now
has, but
that it's easy to get to thinking, forgetting there ever was one right there.
But in terms of your question, I don't have a history, and I would suggest at some point, because we're going to talk a lot about Rails to Trails and my involvement and some of the people who are here now and who are working very hard in some of the projects. However, it would at some point probably be a great idea to have Jim Fincher, who was when Rails to Trails was founded. He was the trail manager.
Oh, okay.
And so when he became president, he continued to trail manage. So when I became president, I said, I will not be doing the stuff that Jim Fincher has been doing, because he was, he did everything. So we've really kind of meted out the responsibilities. So anyway, in terms of the history of the end of the lake, it's my understanding that of course Devin Taylor has
given me some information. Well, where the next question was, okay, I've heard that ground was built on part of the lake in the Mayville area so that the railroad could come through there, and it was going to be right there, right at the edge of the lake. So according to what I've been told, the ground there was actually man-made land.
I wonder how far in, because I don't know. Like, was the depot built on that property as well? Or?
I don't really know. I guess
I would find that hard to believe. There is a section there, like where the boat launch is and back from there, and where the Chautauqua Bell landing is. I could see perhaps maybe there was some swampland there or something.
Yeah, it looks like it might have been like a wetland.
Right.
Yeah.
But in terms of, and there, I full disclosure again, I sit on the Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy Executive Board, but so I should know some of that history too. But I guarantee you, in a day, I will know. So yeah, it would seem to me that area there may be subject to that kind of buildup, but I doubt that the where the depot is now.
Probably not.
But Devin would know.
I think that's pretty solid looking right there by the depot. So why they wanted to run it through right by the lake, I don't know, unless.
Well, there were a series of railroad tracks. Of course, there was a trolley that went completely around the lake and close to the lake, which serviced a lot of the lakeside communities. Again, I still struggle to understand and to answer some of the questions about the crossings and where they went, because as you head out the Mayville section of the trail going from like Bird and Tree Road to Route 430, that section there. There is a crossing. There's a plaque where there's a crossing. I wouldn't be able to tell you the history of that particular track, but I guarantee you that Jim would.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Now, is he the guy that writes a lot of books about the railroad, or am I thinking of somebody else?
No, Jim. No. But I can tell you that we're foreshadowing a future question of yours, I think. But there is a very recent book, which I wish I'd brought with me. Wendy Llewellyn wrote a book called Good Souls.
Oh, okay.
SOLES, about the trailblazers of the Rails to Trails, of the namesakes. You go to these trails and you see the Sheldons and the Nays and the Diggs, and this highlights all of those folks for whom the trails were named.
Yeah, well, for those of you in the viewing audience who are probably too young to remember, the railroad came through there by the lake, and there was a bridge that went over the railroad track for like cars. and maybe horses and buggies,
Right,
depending on how
adjacent
big.
to like where Boxcar Barney's is
Yeah,
now, yes.
yeah, it's in there, and just getting ready for this episode made me think of it. I hadn't thought about that in years, and you do kind of tend to not really think about it
Well,
after
you
a certain
assimilate
amount
the-
of
yeah.
time. After a certain amount of time goes by, you don't really think about it. But that was all taken. The bridge was taken out, and the railroad tracks were taken out, and I'm pretty sure it was in the second half of the 1980s, because it was shortly before my father passed away, the summer before. So that's why I can narrow it down to the second half of the 1980s. And
Sure, and I know that on social media, Facebook, I think there is a Mayville Memories page. I can't remember what it's called, but there was a significant discussion about that bridge, and I just remember being gobsmacked because I went, as I said, to Chautauqua High School, and I'm sure I know I traveled. I had friends up here, and I did, but you do assimilate the now in your kind of memory banks, and I have zero recollection of that bridge. But it probably just was part of the landscape, and you didn't really pay attention to it.
Yeah, after a while, I just didn't think about it anymore.
Sure.
I remember. So, okay, so it must have been not too long after that somebody decided to turn this into a public hiking trail?
Well, when the railroad got out of the railroad business as extensively, as locally as they did, a lot of these places, a lot of these rail beds went up for sale in the 90s, and folks like John Goodell and Andy Goodell's dad. Andy was dragged along for a lot of this.
Oh.
Les Johnson and Sam Thorndike and Robert Burke. There were a bunch of others involved, and that's all in the book. By the way, I would urge you to find Wendy Llewellyn's book.
Wendy
Good
Llewellyn's
Souls.
book. Okay.
Good Souls.
Good Souls. SOLES.
Namesakes and Trailblazers is the subtitle.
Okay.
So I would urge you to look at that if you wanted to go into this in depth. But anyway, they got together and purchased a lot of this land, which was, it's easy for me to say, which was the easy part, connecting them then with land that had already been owned or already been bought, because they weren't a lot of the property owners picked up this property as soon as they possibly could.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So, but a great deal of it was still available. So they picked up all they could and converted it into usable, hikeable, rideable trails. They went through and pushed. They of course had to get rid of all of the ties. If you go along these trails, especially perhaps near Prospect Station out there towards Westfield, you can see on the side some of these the edges of some of the old ties, and they left a lot of the ballast there, and that's kind of what you walk on if we haven't surfaced any of it. The only parts of the trail that have been surfaced with anything other than like limestone or gravel is the section in Mayville that goes from Route 394 approximately to Route 430. Some of that is brick, but a good portion of it is blacktop. That wouldn't have been my choice, but
okay.
it was something that they did, and it's working okay. And then there's a section of Brockton that has been covered with some sort of a pavement, but the rest of it has been just made traversable. Now, our job, of course, now is to make sure it remains traversable. For instance, the section between 430 and Honeysett Road, which we have renamed the James Fincher Trail, was virtually unpassable for 80% of the year because of drainage, because of flood. We have ameliorated that. We are in the process of, we've got some gravel on there now. We are in the process of getting a finer screened limestone top on that, which is friendly to just about any kind of traversing you want to do. That's really the only kind of surfacing right now that we're focused on, and that probably is only because, for instance, that section which goes north out of Mayville, and then the section that goes across where that bridge used to be, out to Summerdale Road, out towards Sherman. We're hoping to move as quickly as we can towards ADA compliance for all of that in front of the lake and those two sections out there. So you can, and right now you really can, if you have a pneumatic stroller or wheelchair, you can get out at the end of the lake and go either way with very little trouble.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
It is not. I will reiterate, it is not officially ADA compliant at the moment, but we're heading towards that.
Oh, good. I know now, and I've never really given it much thought before I was preparing for this interview, but this must have to do with the railroad tracks that ran beside Hannum Road.
You are bound and determined to get me into the history part of this, aren't you? But yes, as I understand it. As a matter of fact, where we go after you cross Honeysett Road, that becomes private property, and that's a discussion that's really important. Our neighbors, and I'll use this section as an example. When you cross Honeysett Road and go towards Plank Road, and then cross Plank Road and head out towards Prospect Station, much of that is private. Well, it's all private. Ours is considered private, but much of that is owned by somebody other than Rails to Trails. And some of those folks are National Grid, who are fabulous neighbors and work well with us. We're really happy with they're just great. And the Weeseys are on that part of the property. That's one of the reasons we closed that section for hunting season. But I think that's the section that of the rail bed that you're talking about, that headed out towards and through Westfield and Brockton.
Oh, on the Hannum Road.
On the no.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, did those tracks come through Mayville and the ones that were on the Hannum Road?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, you don't know?
No,
I don't know either. I never really gave
And again,
it.
Jim Fincher would be the one to ask those questions. But so yeah, I do have a sense of the history of that particular track, the tracks that we own, and some of the periphery. But I don't. I mean, that's an interesting discussion, because people ask that stuff all the time. Where outside of, for instance, when you in the Mayville Trail, there is a plaque where there was a railroad crossing, and that's the one I think you're talking about, that went up to, first of all, it went out towards Jamestown,
okay.
and then it went up towards Hannum Road.
Oh, okay.
And you can see that
because you can see over there. I can remember being a little girl and you could hear the trains running down along beside the Hannum Road there. So, okay, you already mentioned names of the people that were instrumental in getting this started, and how did they go about? They were the ones that were interested in buying the property and turning it into rails to trails. It was their idea.
Exactly, which is why I brought up, I mean, buying the property and converting the property was one thing. The other thing is talking to all of the property owners, the neighbors who granted access, who granted, they had already bought the trails. And so a significant portion of these trails go through other folks' property, and they've granted us easements and or handshake agreements, or whatever. For instance, the Webbs between Route 394, where the village owns that property, and then over the bridge, going out to what we call the first Webb 1, the first section which goes to Morris Road. The Webbs own that property, and they have granted us access to it, and then the next section, the next two sections, we own. So we bought that, and our founders bought that, and then they would negotiate with folks like the Webbs, or these property owners would just come forward and say, "Hey, we'd love to." Many of them did that. I believe that's what happened with National Grid.
Okay, so parts of the trail are owned by individuals because the trail runs through their property.
That's correct.
Okay.
I will tell you that a lot of that stuff is explained and will be clearer on the brand new Chautauqua County Trail Mapping Project, which is about to be unveiled. It's an amazing interactive website, which also will be available on an app that you do not have to be online to follow. You can download the app and you can go, and this is virtually every trail in Chautauqua County. That's the overland trails, the rails to trails, and all of the different kinds of trails there. So a lot of that is, when you click on the map, you can see who owns it, whether it's privately owned, whether it's publicly owned. And I don't know that it'll always give you the owner, but it will tell you that it's privately owned.
Oh, okay. Okay, so Dr. Burke was the first president, is that correct?
That's what I understand.
Okay.
Are you telling me that because you discovered that?
That's what somebody told me.
Yeah. RB, as my wife affectionately calls him. Was
RB?
RB. Robert Burke. He was a mover and shaker, and still supports the trails in a huge way.
Okay. So now you were talking before we came on about there's a certain part of the trail that is pretty amazing. You were talking about cobblestones.
There's lots of parts of the trails that are amazing. You go anywhere on our trail, and it's amazing. But I was talking about some culverts. The culverts were huge undertakings. I can't imagine, because a lot of these trails were elevated artificially to be flat and to go where they go. And so, because of the fact that we're in a watershed, the Lake Erie watershed, a lot of it, there had to be ways to move water under these things, and in some instances, livestock.
Oh, gosh.
So there are all of these culverts, which are amazing time capsules of history, and so some of them we've had to, you have to do work on, otherwise they will fail, and you don't want that happening in the middle of your trail. So we have some of those that need real, six-figure.
Oh my gosh.
Or at least five-figure work. One of them is a kind of is a pet project, which doesn't require that kind of work, but it is going to be the most accessible. These culverts were built, of course, in the 1800s, and they are just beautiful pieces of architecture. They were the stones that they used were huge, and of course you can see the dimples on the stones where the cranes dropped them down, and on the insides of these culverts were maker's marks. You'd see these little kind of trademarks that were carved into there by the builders. Underneath, they are virtually cobblestoned. I think it was because it wasn't just water that had to go through there. They had to. You can see on the sides of some of them there are little sort of latches where it looks like they may have had a wire or a fence to keep the livestock on one side or the other. There's also a date on this one. The one that I'm talking about is in Brockton, near Steve Swank's property, right off of Steve Swank's property. And we are building an egress down there. We're going to do some work on that very shortly, and then we have to build an egress down there to get some equipment down there to clean it out and to get a couple of the trees away from the retaining walls. But when we are able to visit that thing, when the public is able to visit that, it is really, truly going to be a destination to be able to bring folks down and experience. You look up the date, I think it says 1870 something, and just the beauty of course, the woods in there, and of the structure really takes you back, and it's a moment it's a moment in time. Yeah, so we're really and right at that spot. It technically, the trail technically ends, but we own the property, and so we're sending people down to the road at the moment, but we own the property between there and the next intersection, which goes into Brockton. We're at work right now, working with the neighbors there to make sure that it's a partnership. That is the number one thing for us, is to make sure that our neighbors and friends, both adjacent to us and whose property we go over, or whose property we happen to kind of own right through the middle, we want to make sure that nothing happens without their knowledge and acquiescence. Oh, but anyway, so when that culvert is finished, it's going to be a beautiful kind of a showcase for that portion of the trail, and it'll probably coincide with our opening the rest of that section. Okay, well, that sounds like that's going to be really special to visit there. That if you don't visit any other part of the trail, go there when it's finished. Yeah, well, and that's it's all flat, and it's not too far from the Prospect Station spot, which is another historic spot. So yeah, that's a great portion of the trail and it's easy. It is very flat. It's very easy to traverse. And so it's if you're hiking or biking, horseback riding, it's really very cool. Wow. Okay, now let's talk about the special event you hold every year on Christmas Eve Day, and about the historic tragedy that it is a memorial for. Sure. In 1870 something, and I always forget the year. Again, Jim Fincher. That's why we bring him along for that event. Oh, okay. Excuse me. The folks who came before me started this memorial for a tragic event that happened on Christmas Eve in that year, when there was of course, a train station at Prospect Station. That's why they call it that. Mm-hmm. There was actually a bustling little community there. Wow. And so the train was coming into Prospect Station, as I understand it, very late at night on Christmas Eve. It was very cold, and they were heating, of course, in the passenger cars with potbelly stoves. And at a moment, one of the wheels, a broken flange, how the railroad wheels have little flanges on all around them. They kind of look like saucers. One of the flanges broke on what they call the tender wheel on the tender car. And if you've ever been out there at that spot, you'll see there's a kind of ravine on either side. When that happened, that car pulled the rest of the train and the passenger cars down that ravine, turning the passenger car over, and those pot-bellied stoves, of course, turned over as well, and immediately incinerated the entire thing. So getting folks out of there was nearly impossible.
Yeah.
There were a couple of, the porter and the baggage man, I think, did a great deal to save some of the folks. One of them died in the effort. And so the story is fascinating itself. As a matter of fact, I published a song years ago written by a friend of mine and I about that event. Should have brought my guitar so I could sing it, but you can find it online. It's called Christmas Eve at Prospect Station. And it's available where any fine music is streamed. So you can, but anyway, on Christmas Eve at 2 o'clock, every year we have, we start at the Prospect Station trailhead and then go out to the memorial site. And there are a few very, very cool artifacts. There's actually a replica of the actual truck. They call these, the things that hold the wheels are called trucks.
Oh, okay.
And so you can kind of get a view for how that may have happened. And then there are a couple of other memorials, some of them of which we have no idea how they got there. We have,
some of the artifacts?
Somebody put a couple of memorials out there, and we don't know who did it or how, but it's very cool.
They want to be anonymous, must be. So.
And so we do this, it's a very short hike, it's not even a quarter mile. And as of the past few years, it's not unusual to have 150 or 200 people out there on Christmas Eve to experience this. What happens is Jim Fincher will stand next to the memorial and he'll relate the story, and then I'll do the song, and we'll have cider and cookies afterwards, and a great conversation. It's a beautiful community event. It's evolved into something that we'd never imagined would be that big. We just kind of did it to commemorate this. But now it's become one of our major events, and we're very excited about it. Every time we see all these, and they come out in weather, man. They will show up. The last year, not this past year, but the year before, if you recall, Christmas Eve was closing in on 70 below wind chill factor.
That really horrible. Yeah.
There was no snow, but we were. That was when Buffalo got nailed. We were just. It was freezing, so we moved it to New Year's Eve that year, and we still had over 100 people.
Okay.
But anyway, last year it was record setting, and it's just a really, really great event, and I can't urge enough for folks to come out. It's easy to come. It is not exactly, as I said, handicap ADA compliant, but certainly because it's flat, if you have a decent enough conveyance, you'll be able to get out there.
Yeah. Well, actually, I have to say that Christmas Eve of 2023 was the first time that I went on the hike. My husband had been on it one or two other times.
Sure.
Without me, but this past year I managed to budget my time good enough that I could get out there this time, and I was surprised. I didn't realize just how many people came to it till I got there.
Yeah, and it doesn't. And we don't keep you there all day, but it's a question of turning it in. A lot of folks have just turned it into a tradition, a Christmas Eve tradition. They work it around their whatever dinner they're doing, whatever the other family traditions are. And we have kids. People bring their kids out there. People bring their grandkids, and it's really fun.
Yeah, it was.
And sad, but it's fun to get the community together. For this kind of commemoration.
Yeah,
and history.
I remember being there I remember talking to people that I'd never met before, and at the same time, I saw people that I knew but hadn't seen in a long time.
And I can tell you that that is one of our objectives. Is and we do a thing called the Wine Walk on the Web Trail every July. Watch for that, where we have various wineries and other sponsors who come out, and we put up like 12 stations on this section of the trail, just between. I'm going to say, Boxcar Barney's. Might as well give them a shout out, and Morris Road. And you buy your ticket, you get yourself a little a wine glass, and you go from station to station. There's charcuterie, and there's sweets and snacks, and of course wine and some beers along the trail. It's fun. It's so much fun. We sell it out every year. So as soon as you see it, you wanna buy tickets. Excuse me. But
as soon as you see advertising?
As soon as you see advertising, yeah, because
okay.
it does sell out. But what you said about that event, the Christmas Eve event and this event, every single time, plus, by the way, there's music. There's so many musicians, friends of mine, who come out and set themselves up on the trail for the wine walk.
For the wine walk, okay.
So you get to experience that. But every single time I go there, I experience at least a half a dozen people, and that's just me, just chatting, who have never set foot on a trail before.
A trail?
Well, a trail, Chautauqua Rails to Trails.
Oh, okay.
So getting them out, getting folks out on the trail, understanding how easy it is to get there from virtually anywhere in the county, and having them have an experience like that is, obviously, that's everything to us. We want to make sure that people use these things. And again, obviously, during the pandemic, trail usage went sky high. It went up 80%.
Because it was someplace people could go.
Exactly.
Well, that's pretty interesting. Yeah. I remember in part of the story about this Christmas Eve tragedy. One of Paul Leon's books has a story about it somehow. But one of the part of the story that you guys one of you was saying this past Christmas Eve was something about somebody handed a baby out the window of the train.
That was the first that I had heard, and that was one of the and that's the other part of this, and that ties into what I was talking about. When you get folks out on the trail, and when you get them interested, and when you tie their ancestors into this sort of thing. And this was, I think the person that you're talking about had an ancestor that they knew was involved in this. And that was the first that I'd heard, that there was somebody who I think lost their life handing a baby out. And that's all I know about it. That's the recollection that I have. But
yeah.
I will chase down that story, because that should become part of the lore. For sure.
Yeah, oh, definitely. And then there was one of Paul Leon's books. I don't know if it was embellished. It probably was.
Paul wouldn't do that.
Are you sure? So, anyways, I should have. Well, anyway, according to him, there was somebody on the train that, after the accident, lived long enough to give birth to a little girl or something like that.
Yeah,
I'm not sure. It was almost like the baby had been raised by its grandmother or something. And
wow.
I
have a recollection of that, but I don't.
I should go. I'll have to go back and read the book sometime, but.
Well, here is a chance for us to suggest, again, that there are many resources locally for some of these stories and tales. So for your poets and your songwriters who want to contribute to this lore, for me, that's a way that you can make these things stay around. Paul Leon is one of our biggest, greatest treasures. with regard to keeping some of this lore alive, as is Devin Taylor. And all of the other historians here. You know, there are some people who would be glad to fill you in on some of this stuff. Should you want to write a more concise piece about some of these stories? And again, Wendy Llewellyn's book, Good Souls, is the latest of these things to put some personality to put the kind of faces to these names and lives to these names. So yeah, there are a lot of resources. And you know, when you and I talk like this, and we have these anecdotes or we have these recollections of something, you know, we do have these resources that we can go and find out. So I would urge all of us to do that. You know, there are some interesting stories. There is a couple of stories that Paul wrote about that are going to become songs, because one of them was pretty baughty, but you know,
Pretty bawdy?
Pretty bawdy, yeah. I mean, you know,
You can't go into detaels on television.
well, you know, it has something to do with more than one wife and somebody's ride, but it ties in with definitely with some of the stuff that we've talked about. So, yeah, in some circles, it'll be a song I can do.
Yeah.
Because people are always asking me to do songs. I'll reference my father again. You know, when he would always be asked to bring out his guitar at family gatherings or whatever gatherings, and he'd say, "Well, what shall I play?" And they'd say, "Well, play anything." And so finally, he wrote a song called "Anything."
Oh, okay.
And it itself was a bit bawdy. So, you know, people thought twice before they told him to play anything.
After that.
After that.
Okay, I hope you don't mind my bringing it up, but there was, a few years ago, there was kind of a gruesome discovery along the trail.
There were a couple of them, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, at that moment, of course, everybody realized, and the sheriff will be the first one to tell you, it could have been anywhere, that, you know, nothing happened. None of this, you know, when those two bodies or one or two bodies were discovered, it was very clear from the very beginning that none of what happened to them happened on or near the trail.
Oh,
anywhere.
Probably not. No.
It was in a city, and they were brought out and buried there.
The one woman was more of a recent person who had just disappeared from the Buffalo area.
Right.
Just a few months earlier.
Yeah.
And
so, but again, these had nothing to do with the trails. They just happened to be, probably had more to do with the I-90 than I mean, just because it was, you know, you could pull off in Brockton and find a remote area. So. It just had to do, you know, if anything, it has to do with the fact that it is, you know, a beautiful spot in the woods. It's easy to get away there, but it had very little to do, it had nothing to do with or the actual event that caused their demise had nothing to do with our trails.
Oh no, of course not. It was just something a hiker discovered.
Yeah.
When they were walking there. So.
Yeah. But those, you know.
You know, although I do have to say, probably if you're going on a hike, you know, over a fairly lengthy expanse of trail, probably it's a good thing to go in with friends.
Oh, and not only is it a good thing, it's a fun thing. Now I'm a runner, so you know.
Do you run on it?
I do.
On rails to trails?
I do. You know, if I'm up for a flat run, I do a lot of biking out there too. I will confess that I cheat on rails to trails every once in a while. I'll go on the Overland Trail, especially the brand new Overland Trail, which goes the east side, which goes out to the gorge.
Right.
We recently have our trailhead off of Summerdale, which goes all the way out to Titus Road in Sherman. We and the county, the EC, have combined our trailhead. There used to be two trailheads there, one for the Overland Trail and one for the Rails to Trails. Well, now everybody starts on the rails to trails, and about 300 yards up, then the Overland Trail goes out towards the gorge, and they have built not only a trail that gets you out closer to the ridge more quickly, because it used to be it was nice, but you didn't get to the gorge until like the end of the trail.
Oh, okay.
It was lovely. It was great, but this one has not only brought you out more quickly to the ridge, but also built another gorge loop, which you can add if you want to.
Oh.
So I'm touting another trail here, but,
Yeah.
but you know, so I run
Yeah.
a lot and bike a lot on those trails. But yes, of course, it's fun to start in Mayville and go either direction. If you're out for a bike or a run, you can get to Brockton, very easily. You can get out to Sherman. We are now working on, tightening up our connections with the Northeastern Pennsylvania Trail group, who have come all the way to Corey and are heading towards Clymer and Sherman. I mean, we have some sections out there. We're working again with neighbors, but if you go out that way, you can get to the Erie-Pittsburgh Trail. If you go out the other way towards Brockton, we are virtually connected to the Empire State Trail, which goes all the way out across the state into New England.
Oh my gosh!
So this is what's important about trails, and it's what's important about Rails to Trails, especially right now, because we are connected with these two trail organizations. I mean, we attend their gatherings. They're the next Erie-Pittsburgh Trail Association meeting is going to be in Chautauqua County. They're that interested in us as the linchpin for these two trails. So it's a big thing that we're doing. And one of the things that really I can't highlight enough is that because of all of this, you're going to have a number of towns, Mayville, Brockton, Sherman, who could apply for national trail town status. And that's a big deal. That means you show up in everybody's itinerary,
Oh, wow.
And for instance, if somebody wanted to come into Mayville, stay in a hotel here or into any of these other towns and get on their bike or start trekking one way or the other, it is absolutely easy to do, and there's a lot of other things to do while you're here.
Mm-hmm. Not like just going out in the wilderness and plowing your way through brush, because the trails are maintained.
Correct. I mean, we have some brush to plow through to make this still to make it easier. But and some of it, you have got to get off and go onto a road to get to the next trail. We're working on trying to tighten that up. But we're working very hard with folks on both ends, especially the Corey folks, the Sherman folks, and the Northeastern Pennsylvania Trail organizations.
Yeah. So now we've talked about 2 events that you have along the trail. Do you have others?
We do, and I will tell you that one of them is our, and this is not necessarily on the trail, but we do the Christmas event, and it's been at Big Inlet Brewing every year. Well, we were stuttered by the pandemic, as everything else was. So that's our
Christmas event.
That's our Christmas sort of party and meeting. It's an annual thing that we didn't mean for it to become a tradition, but you do it once, and everybody tells you have to do it again. I do have to double back for a quick second. I know we're running low on time, but speaking of manifesting the trails, we have just opened another trail in Frewsburg, the Carroll Area Nature Trail, which goes from Main Street to Riverside. We also own property from Riverside down into the Pennsylvania State Forest.
Oh.
They're very excited about us manifesting eventually that trail from Frewsburg all the way down into there. We've got a bunch of town supervisors working on that, and that's all our property.
And this is also land that had a railroad going through it? Oh, okay.
Yeah, it is all a trail bed.
Okay.
Yes, it is. So that's very exciting. So if you go to our website, you'll keep abreast of all this stuff, and that is CHAURTT. Let me make sure that I have that correct because I often get that wrong. CHAU, like Chautauqua, CHAURTT. Chautauqua Rails to Trails. Or you can just use your favorite search engine and search for Chautauqua Rails to Trails. That'll get you to our website. And all of the news, including the Trackin' newsletter, which comes out seasonally and lets you know all of the stuff that's happening and how you can help. Our meetings are usually the first Monday of every month. The next couple of months are going to be, we're not going to quite stick to that, but certainly if you check out if you get on our Facebook page, if you there's also Friends of Chautauqua County Greenways page, and that will tell you about our meeting. The meetings are open to the public, and we're always looking for volunteers. We're always looking for, of course, financial help. There's a lot of work to be done, and I'm thrilled to be involved at a time when we're doing it. Our projects right now are varied and many, and every year the end of the year report gets more exciting.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to bring up something since you said you're involved with the Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy. Mm-hmm. And I remember one time we went and walked around on some property out on the Lyons Road. Mm-hmm. It was fairly new the year we checked it out, and it was around about, I think the first weekend in May maybe, sure, or something like that. And the entire 22 acres, is that how many it is? Am I remembering correctly? Anyway, the entire piece of property was carpeted with what's known as, what people around here call leeks.
Oh, yeah.
Or I guess the real name for them is ramps.
Okay.
And it was just wonderful. Yeah. It was one of those picture-perfect weather days.
Yeah, if we can diverge for a second, the new map coming out, the new interactive map, will have all of the Conservancy's trails on there as well.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's good. That's good. Well, thank you for appearing on Fresh Perspectives. Mm-hmm. Today. It was a lot of fun talking about
certainly,
this.
and as you can see, we could probably do another episode on this.
Probably,
I do appreciate you having us over.
After we go in the history books and check out the history of these railroads.
Maybe we have a panel discussion next time.
So I will see those of you in the viewing audience when I do the next episode.